it's actually okay to have emotions, but not to let the emotions dominate and rule you. Feel them, understand them, know why they're there, acknowledge it, and then move forward.
Hello guys, welcome to the Undefeated podcast with me, Chardone. Today we are joined by a very, very special guest, Kelly McNeil. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Amazing. But first off, shall we start off with you telling us what it is you do?
Okay, so what it is I do a lot of things. By day, I'm a school counsellor, or school therapist, and I work in a East London boys' school, and that is offering support to the students. So it's secondary, so it goes from year 11 plus it has year 7 to year 11, then it has sixth form, and in sixth form it's girls also, so I work with both boys and girls.
So you work with boys up to a certain age to year 11, and then sixth form when they have the mixed girls, you do both?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And also I'm a youth pastor, so I run a youth group, and that covers, again, secondary school age up to sixth form, year 13. So yeah, I wear different hats, but it's all focused around young people.
How did you get into that? Like, what qualifications did you need?
Interesting. So qualifications are, I had to do 4 years of studies. So I did a level 2 in counselling skills, a level 3 in counselling studies, and then a level 4, which is a diploma in therapeutic counselling. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it was part-time. So I worked during the day full-time with 2 young children, and then did study sort of in the evening on the weekends.
So did you know from when you picked out your qualifications, that's kind of the lane you wanted to head down?
Well, yeah, I kind of fell into it, really, in a sense. It wasn't something that I woke up and thought, yeah, I want to be a counsellor. It was through my own personal counselling journey that I came to this sort of decision that this is something that I would want to be able to do for others because of what the journey did for me, and how it massively impacted my life. Coming out of therapy, I just felt like this is something that I want to be able to give other people the opportunity to experience, and more focused in the area of young people, because in my mind, if I can catch them when they're earlier, it gives them a greater chance of having the kind of life that they want when they get older, so they don't have to try and navigate through life like I did. I went into personal therapy in my mid-30s, so it's kind of halfway through my life. But I'm thinking, if I can get to young people at 14 and 15 and help them to build their self-esteem and navigate their way through life, and equip them with the right tools to be able to manage their life and whatever pitfalls they might come across, then yeah, that would be like the best thing ever for me, just knowing that I've equipped them and they will know now how to manage certain situations they might find themselves in as adults.
So you touched on that you was in therapy yourself. Do you want to talk about it a little bit, like why you decided to go to therapy, what was happening, and maybe why you thought that was the best way for you to get help?
Yeah, I mean, so I finally made a decision to actually have therapy in my middle 30s. But I feel like if I really reflect on my life from a teen, if I had the opportunity that young people have today, where there are therapists in schools and that counselling and therapy is not as taboo as it was then I think I would have gone for counselling then, because I think I struggled in my teenage years, and definitely with self-esteem, probably had a bit of depression. So I guess those things weren't resolved in childhood, so I carried them along in my life. Then obviously in your 20s, certain things happen, incidents happen, and it just builds and builds. And it got to the point that I felt like I was pressing the self-destruct button. And my life was unraveling, just unraveling at an immense speed. It was like a steam train without brakes. And I just got to the point where I was like, I need help. I need to speak to someone. So I got a number. I called the number. The person answered, said, hello, and I opened my mouth to say, hi, I'd like to make an appointment. And all that came out was wailing and crying.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, okay, so we need to get you in.
Oh, so she knew immediately. She was like, yep. It wasn't even a question like, does she need that? It was like, okay, yeah, come in.
Yeah. She was like, okay, so when are you free? We need to get you in as soon as possible. And that was when my journey started.
Did you know straight away when you was looking for help, it wasn't a matter of like where to go? Like you didn't think, oh, let me speak to a family member or anything. Did you know straight away it was easier maybe to talk to a stranger like a therapist?
Oh, definitely. I think for me, family probably would have been the last place that I would have gone.
Why is that? Because I think a lot of people find it hard to maybe talk to family members because they feel like they have a look on them already and they don't want to just tarnish that look or whatever. So why do you think people don't go to family members and do go to therapists?
Well, okay, I would look at it from two angles. For me personally, I think family members, we can tend to have a view of a person. And so may possibly be like, oh, you don't need to go, you just need to do this, family are very good at giving unsolicited advice. They will tell you what you need and tell you where oh, you don't need that, you just need to do. That was not what I needed. I needed somebody to actually sit and listen to what I'm saying and not have an opinion or not make a judgment on what I need. It's that whole thing. I know what I need and I need someone to listen to me right now. I don't need you telling me what I need to do and I should have done and what I could have done. I know all of that. So that's why I didn't entertain talking to family members. And I think for me, the massive thing was judgment, just that fear of judgment, not so much failure, but judgment. Mental health is in certain generations, so my generation, generations before, it's stigmatized. And it's like if you go to a therapist or you need therapy, then there's something seriously wrong with you. No, there isn't. You just need someone to talk to help you just unravel where you're at. And that's what I needed.
Why do you think it is so stigmatized? Because you're right. I think when people heard or hear that you're going to a therapist or seeking help, they're kind of like, oh gosh, something must be seriously wrong. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you do just need to talk to someone about something. So why do you think people look down on it?
I would put it down to stereotypes, maybe in movies or series shows where you get a therapist and I think people don't know the difference between a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. They're all different roles. I think in the movies, like I say, and on TV, they kind of band everything together.
They do.
So if you say to somebody, I'm seeing a therapist, straight away, most people think psychiatrist, which means, you have some serious psychological issues going on.
What are some of the differences, just in case people at home don't know?
Well, for therapists, what I do, counselling, that's more about emotional well-being. And it does obviously factor in with mental well-being. I would say psychologists and psychiatrists, and I could really be putting myself out here as somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. But, it's more about the brain. I think with psychiatry, it's more about how the brain works and using medication to treat the brain function and what's going on in the brain. So that's where I would say with psychiatry and counselling therapy, a talk therapy, what I do is more emotional side of things. So although psychiatry deals with depression and anxiety and all those other mental health, I don't want to say disorders, but it comes from a more treatment medicine, it does the whole package. I don't medicate, I don't write prescriptions for people, I don't suggest which medication I think people should go on, because I'm not qualified for that.
Right.
But a psychiatrist is.
Would be. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, we'll go into like treatments and the difference, like what your opinions are on medication, and a conversation, we'll go into that later. But earlier you mentioned that a lot of your issues stem from childhood, and that it continued on later. Do you think that if you did speak to someone earlier, you'd have dealt with it later? Like, how beneficial do you think it is to speak to someone when you're young versus when you're older?
I might be biased, but I think the sooner the better. Because one thing, if I talk from my own experience as a young person, when you're growing up, your emotional and mental maturity isn't there. So something small or that's deemed as small can happen, but because emotionally and mentally you're not mature enough to be able to process it and see, well, actually it's not that deep, we run off with it and we overthink it, and as far as we're concerned, that's what happened and that's what it is, and we then let that inform everything else. So how can I say, I went through a situation, say, with a boy at school, and this boy did something to me that made me think that I was like the ugliest person in the whole world. Then I would have run off with that and think, right, that's it, nobody likes me, I'm ugly, I'm this and I'm that, because one person, I wasn't their type, so to speak. So, but then that could impact and have a bigger impact as I grow up. If I'm growing up and every young guy that approaches me that just shows me that they're not interested, it just builds on that. See, told you, I must be Quasimodo, I must be so grotesque, because like this is like the 7th boy that's rejected me now. Do you understand what I mean? And that kind of was a bit of my journey growing up, and thinking, my self-esteem was terrible. And then I carried that into later life, which then affects my confidence and interactions with people, jobs that I would apply for, go for things that are way below what I'm capable of doing, because in my head, I'm not capable of doing it, whereas I was more than capable. So just catching those little seeds when they're younger stops them from kind of blossoming into massive big oak trees that you have to just do some deep excavation to get rid of.
It's so funny because I think people underestimate people's like childhood and how much what happens then really kind of changes the way you go through life.
Yeah.
And as a child, you are a sponge. You literally soak up every bit of information that's around you. Yeah. And I like the part where you said the emotional, would you say maturity or intelligence isn't there yet?
The maturity, because, I don't think people realise that it's taught. Emotional maturity is kind of something that's taught. If you're raised by parents that are not in tune with their emotions or don't feel comfortable expressing their emotions or talking about emotions, then you grow up as somebody who may find it difficult also, because, in my experience with my own children, I teach them about emotions and that it's actually okay to have emotions, but not to let the emotions dominate and rule you. Feel them, understand them, know why they're there, acknowledge it, and then move forward.
This might be personal. You can say no. Yeah. But how many kids do you have?
I have 2.
And are they, what are they, boys, girls?
I have a girl of 19 and a boy who's just turned 13.
The reason why I asked you was because a lot of people sometimes when raising kids raise them up differently depending on gender.
Yeah.
And so I think with women we kind of give them a pass to be emotional, but with men, you know, teaching them how they should grow up, we always say to them, you know, be tough, suck it up, don't be emotional. So how did you teach your kids to deal with emotions growing up?
It's interesting you should say that because my daughter is the one that would probably withhold her emotions more than my son. My son has had an emotional intelligence from quite young. You know, I remember him being sort of 4 and saying to me, "Mummy, I feel sad." And then when I asked him, "Well, why do you feel sad?" he actually explained to me why he felt sad, which doesn't sound like anything big, but for a young boy of 4 to be able to say what he feels and explain why, that's a big thing. So I latched onto that, and I would encourage those conversations with him to help him form an emotional language, and be able to talk about what he's feeling and why he's feeling it. Same with my daughter. You know, I've always been very open with them in conversation, like, you know, talk to me about it. What's going on for you? Tell me, you know. They just this morning in a conversation with my daughter, I was asking her, "Do you feel like I therapeutize you?"
Oh no, what did she say?
She was like, "No, not really, but you do sometimes give us the counsellor eyes." And I'm like, "What's the counsellor eyes?" She said, "You just do this kind of, this look where you look at us and you kind of stare and you don't say anything, but you're looking."
As if like you're reading them or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Processing what's going on. I'm reading their body language. And so I said, okay.
Do you try and separate the two, or you don't mind them kind of going into each other? Like mum versus counsellor?
No, I don't want to be a counsellor to my children. I want them to know that they can come and talk to me, but I don't want to counsel them. I want to be able to equip them. I want to be able to help them to be able to form their own understanding and guiding them, yes, but actually trying to counsel them, no, it's not fair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like we went in straight deep, so I'm gonna go up a little bit, go a bit lighter.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do day to day.
Day to day.
Yeah.
Day to day. Yeah, like I said, many hats. So it's the school counsellor, counselling, say 4 or 5 boys a day, or 6 formers if I've got girls. What sort of hobbies do I have? To be honest, I don't really have much time for hobbies, but if I do, I like to sit down and watch a good series.
What's your favourite series right now?
I'm not watching anything right now. Actually, my daughter got me watching this Ultimatum
on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The Ultimatum. Yeah. So yeah, I was definitely therapeutising that.
Yeah, I would imagine. Because you probably spotted who was going to make it and who wasn't going to make it before. I mean, if anyone hasn't watched it, it's about this couple that have been together for like 2-3 years, and one partner wants to get married, the other partner doesn't want to get married, so there's this ultimatum, and at the end of the whole show you have to think, am I going to get married to this person or not?
It's interesting. I get accused of people watching a lot.
Oh, I can imagine.
But I can't help it. I do read people, but not to form an opinion or a judgment. Just to get a feel for who they are. Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
If you can see someone's on edge, you can be the one to bring them in. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing. So what do you like about your job?
I love working with young people. I love the energy. I love the honesty, the rawness. I love that they don't immediately trust you. I found that there's a lot of, in my work with young people, both in the counselling room and outside, there's a lot of boundary pushing. And the boundary pushing is generally to do with, can I trust you? How far can I go? Will you judge me? will you be open? So yeah, and I love that. I love the fact that they want to check me out before they open up, because when I see them open up, I know they trust and they feel safe. So yeah, like I like the energy. I like I'm often laughing very loud
Oh,
in the
that's nice.
counselling room with some of the young boys that I work with.
It must be nice seeing the transition from when they first come to talk to you to, like, I don't know, maybe 5 sessions in or something, where they're just like, hey, so how are you?
I absolutely love it. And I think the most rewarding thing for me is when they come in and, they don't know where they're at. And then when they leave, the majority of them, it's like you can literally see that they're empowered. And, I think for me, one of the best things is, working maybe with a young man that might have an anger issue and is getting in trouble, and being sent to isolation, let's say, and then will come in and say, do you know what? I got really angry the other day, but I remembered what we did and I did that and it really helped. And I think for a therapist, when you hear your client come in and say, what we talked about or what we did, I applied that, I used it, and it helped me, because therapy will not work if you don't apply what goes on in the room.
Very true.
And there is a misconception that I will fix it. This isn't Jim will fix it. Kelly will not fix it. I can't, but I can give you the tools to be able to manage and get through what you're going through. You will fix your situation. It's not me. I'm not the fairy godmother and I don't wave a wand and make everything. I'd love to, but it really is down to what the client does. Yeah, in the room.
I never had a school counsellor, so I don't know how the process works. Do they get recommended to come to you? Do they go on their own? Oh, they get recommended.
So there's the secondary part of school, so the sort of year 7s to 11s. Generally, they come in by referral from the teacher that deals with mental well-being. Sixth formers, on the other hand, a lot of them self-refer.
Okay.
But they still go through the mental well-being coordinator, the assistant head teacher that deals with that. But yeah, you'll find that the older ones will request it, generally around exam times.
Yeah, I can imagine the stress
and anxiety. Yeah.
What's like a normal session like? Because like you said, in movies, a lot they like to say that the counsellor does all the work. Oh, actually, no, they don't. In movies, it's very much so like, okay, so how are you feeling and how are you doing? And a lot of people sometimes think, well, why am I here if you're just going to ask me a bunch of questions about myself? So do you know what I mean? So how does the normal session go? Is it really like it is in the movies where they just sit and ask you a bunch of questions and say, okay, time's up?
Okay, so working with young people or adolescents is different to working with adults, in a sense that it will be more practical things, like maybe using a bit of art, painting, drawing. I play a lot of games with my young people. We'll play Uno.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that sounds like so much fun.
We'll sit and play Uno, but while we're playing Uno, we're talking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll play board games, but we're talking. And we're playing a board game and not even talking about anything therapeutic, and then they'll just say blah.
Right.
So it kind of it disarms and it brings the walls down, because I'm playing a game and I'm enjoying myself, I'm having fun, and then I feel comfortable because Kelly's engaging in the game, we're playing, we're talking, we're laughing, and you know what, the other day this happened. Really? Tell me a bit more about that.
So you get them comfortable first and then they feel free to open up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Is it still taboo within schools to go to see help? Because I know on the outside it can be, but in schools, is it more accepted, or is it still a bit like, oh, why are you going to see her for?
I think there's a lot of curiosity from the boys. or that do come and see me, there's, their friends, they know that a lot of them know, "Oh, you're going off to see Miss," and I know that they'll say, "What are you doing there? What happens?" So there is a lot of curiosity around that, but I think it depends on the student that comes in. Some of them will be quite happy to tell their friends, "Oh yeah, I'll go for counselling and we talk about this." Some of them will be very closed about it and won't want to. I only really tell my closest friends. So I still feel we've got a long way to go. I still feel like, there is a level of secrecy, but more confidentiality. Because not every young person wants their class to know I'm going to the counsellor because of that stereotype of, oh, there's something, I think one boy said to me, one of his classmates said, "Well, what's wrong with you? Why are you going to her?" And I'm like, why did there have to be something wrong with you to go? So yeah, we do still have a long way to go to break the stigma.
How has treatment changed over the years?
Treatment, it's an interesting word. It's not a word that I would use.
Yeah, okay. What word would you use?
Because I think treatment would probably fit, like I was saying earlier, psychiatry. So I don't really have insight in how treatment, maybe the thought behind treatment may have changed from my understanding. But in terms of people coming for counselling, requesting counselling, or being interested in having counselling, I think people are a lot more open to it. And I think if you're looking at treatment, I would think of that more in terms of the approach, the counselling approach that's used. And there are several different types. You may have heard of CBT, psychodynamic, psychoanalysis, all these different person-centered, all these different counselling approaches are what people tend to use, therapists will tend to use. So it all depends on which area you're trained in. You have integrative therapists that will pull from several different types of approaches, depending on what the client will present, how the client presents in the counselling room, what sorts of situations they may talk about, what sort of struggles they may be having. And there's always an approach that might fit, helping to facilitate or help that person to work their way through whatever it is that they've come to the counselling room with. I'm not sure if that answered.
No, it did. Do you think people are more open because in TV shows and on the media we see it more? Or do you think more people are suffering and it's just a matter of fact of you're just seeing more people ask for help because of things like social media and just... Actually, mainly social media. So why do you think people are more open to it?
Because I think that the understanding around mental well-being is a lot clearer, and I think there's far more information put out nowadays, and I feel like there is a kind of for want of a better word, demystifying it. So making it more understandable and more acceptable. And I think when you see people in the media, like celebrities, talking about their own mental well-being struggles, I think that kind of makes it more normal. Like, well, if a celebrity is struggling, who is the epitome of perfection, and they are happy to talk about their own experiences and that they've been for therapy and what therapy has done for them, then I think that the average person on the street will tend to think, well, it can't be that bad. I do feel like sometimes the cost of therapy might be...
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you mentioned celebrities, but continue.
Yeah, I think that's a massive barrier for people. I think that people feel, well, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. And I think that, in my experience, has been a massive thing that's been a bit of barrier.
Yeah, I was going to say, because as much as celebrities are normalizing it, people think, okay, well, if it's only accessible to celebrities, how am I supposed to get the same help that they're claiming to? It's kind of like when you hear celebrities on a new diet and they have all these nutritionists, it's like, okay, yeah, great, you can afford that.
Yeah.
I can't. So do you think as well, as much as they do normalize it, they do kind of make it more of a high society thing where I can afford it and you can't?
Yeah. I think language as well, my therapist, it can tend to sound like therapists are only for celebrities or people with money. Whereas nowadays, in the kind of circles that I've worked in, so when I was training, and I had to do 100 hours voluntary training, and I worked in agencies that were supporting survivors of abuse. I think that showed me the other end of the scale and how desperate the need is for more therapists and more support for those who really need it but just can't afford it, maybe because of the social economical issues, the areas that they live in. Because one thing I found, that certain geographical locations have specific issues.
Talk about that. Actually, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, I've worked in East London, and certain parts of East London, domestic abuse is prevalent. So there's certain communities that will have certain issues that they struggle with more than other areas. So in areas where it's more affluent and there's more money, it can tend to be addictions.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that was something that I wasn't actually prepared for in training. Not that it wasn't taught, but maybe it just didn't really resonate with me until I actually went out and began to work with people and found that, well, domestic abuse seems to be prevalent in this community, in communities as well. So, even in certain ethnicities, it's more prevalent than in others. But yeah, so, and I find that a lot of children have been exposed to that. So I worked in primary for a year, and quite a few of the children, so we're talking year 1, year 2, were children that had witnessed domestic abuse in the home. So, those were the times where it was more difficult. So yeah, I feel like I've gone off track.
No, it's fine. I was going to lead off that actually and say, how, if we had to put in a percentage, which I don't know if we can, how much of mental health issues do you think is down to genetics maybe, and how much do you think is maybe down to environmental?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I'm well versed enough on percentages with that, to be honest, to statistics.
But personally, how many do you think people you see, how much would you say, yeah, a lot of it is down to the environment they grew up in?
I would say more environment.
Okay.
Yeah. Although, again, genetics does play a big part.
Do you agree with that then?
Yeah, I do think there are some where it is, whether it's learned behaviour, let's say, or whether it is something that is actually in the DNA that's passed down.
And do you look into that sometimes, or?
Sometimes, but not in depth.
Okay.
Not in depth. I think it's good to have historical information, and that is part of the assessment that you will do, especially when you're working with primary age children. The assessment is, what's the parents' background? Did they have any mental health struggles? So because it will impact on the child eventually, whether that's because of the environment or because it's genetic.
What's the youngest age you counsel? Because I'm very interested when you say child, I'm thinking, how young is a child?
The youngest I've counselled would be 5.
5?
5.
So, wow. So do you think people... Oh, wow. I'm taken back. So at 5 years old, this kid was struggling with mental issues? And was that about their environment that they grew up in?
Yeah.
And how did you recognise that 5-year-old needed help?
It was a referral from school.
Okay.
And how the child was behaving in class and in the playground and conversations, because little ones, they mimic what they see, and they will talk. They'll just talk. You know, you might just be playing with the younger ones, so the 5-year-olds, it was Lego, it was colouring, it was Play-Doh. You know, we might be building something with Lego, and they might pick up 2 mini Lego figures and be going, oh, what's going on there? And then they'll be telling you, well, this one's angry and this one's shouting, this one said that. Okay. And so you can see they're actually enacting what they've seen at home, or what they may be seeing at home.
Right. And do you sometimes, if it is something to do with like what they're dealing with at home, do you get the parents involved?
Safeguarding, right, straight away. It has to be a safeguarding. If a child is in danger, or you know, at risk, in an environment that is not safe, then safeguarding has to be priority.
How do you know the difference between when it's just a phase and when it's actually something you need to look deeper into?
I think that it's got a lot to do with behaviour and how it plays out, because I find with children and young people, a lot of the times finding the words, and like I was saying about earlier about the emotional maturity, finding the words to be able to communicate what's going on is quite difficult. So it comes out in other ways. And maybe difficult behaviour to draw attention to themselves, you know, like this whole negative attention. Any attention is good. I don't care if it's positive or negative, as long as somebody's actually noticing me. So if a child is doing something that's constantly drawing attention to themselves, what they're trying to say is, I need help, a lot of the time. I don't say all the time, but, you know, it's a good sign to be thinking, well, maybe I should explore what's going on here. Because if this child is constantly doing things that are getting an adult to talk to them, or they're getting adults' attention with what's going on.
Is there any signs we have to look out for? Is it literally just don't judge off of a sign you may think you saw?
Yeah.
Actually have the conversation and talk about it.
Have the conversation, definitely. I'd like to use an example, but I can't, of somebody you know, that had a situation with a child recently, and, you know, following up on something a child had said, and, you know, it could have gone so left, but it was not as big as what the child made it out to be. So that's why it's good to just keep having conversations, and safeguarding is such an important issue. But I feel like, for me personally, let me talk about myself here, it's so tricky that you just want to make sure you're on it all the time and that you don't miss a thing. So sometimes we can jump the gun because we're so worried about something happening to a child and us missing it. So I feel like it's the balance of asking questions but knowing when action needs to be taken.
And when an outsider wants to take action for another person, is that allowed, one, and how do they go about it?
If you're talking about in terms of counselling and getting them help, I think the most important thing about therapy and counselling is that the person needs to want it themselves.
Okay, right.
So we might be able to see that cousin George is really struggling at the moment and he really needs some support and therapy, and that'd be great for him. And I'm going to call a therapist and I'm going to line up an appointment for cousin George and I'm going to take him there. If cousin George doesn't think that he needs therapy or doesn't want it, it's a waste of time.
And there's no forcing them, or...
It's a waste of time.
Right.
A waste of money and a waste of time, because therapy works because you want it. And because you realise and recognise you're in a place where I need this. I need help. If somebody thinks you need help and they're trying to drag you, I know for a fact if I felt I was okay and somebody was trying to drag me and say, no, you need therapy, I'm digging my heels in. But no, why should I have therapy when I feel I'm okay with somebody else? And it's different if a person is presenting and their behaviour is erratic and risky and, you know, you're actually concerned that they might actually do something that will harm them, then it's about having that conversation with the person and saying, look, I really feel we need to get you to the GP, have a conversation with the GP first step. That's the approach I would use. I think you have to judge it by the severity of how that person's presenting. If someone's about to try and take their life by suicide, you'd want to go A&E with them.
Oh, okay. So that's the next step is A&E.
If you were with somebody who's like, I'm literally going to end my life right now, A&E, call an ambulance. Call an ambulance. If an ambulance can't come quick enough, take them to A&E.
Right.
And take them to see the there's a mental wellbeing team that works in the A&E, and take them to see, just get them help that way.
Okay.
But, you know, somebody who's like, yeah, my life's just really tough at the moment, well, we're going to drag you off to a counsellor. They're going to need to do that themselves.
Got you. How would someone recognize depression within themselves? Because we all have bad days. How can we tell ourselves, okay, this is depression and this is just a bad day? What are the telltale signs?
I was thinking about that. And I think for me, like a bad day, a rough day, generally tends to be situational. Something's happened. You've had an argument with somebody, you know, or something's not turned out right, or, you know, and it's something where you just feel bad in that moment. But as you're able to resolve that situation, you can pick yourself up and you go again. I think with depression, again, if I kind of think about how I experienced it, it was a bit of a black hole. And there's a lovely piece of imagery on the internet at the moment about depression being described as a black dog that just follows you around, and as much as you try and shake it off, it's just always there. It's you know, with depression, it's this kind of sinking feeling that I want to do something, but I have no motivation. I've lost interest in the things that used to interest me. I don't really want to engage with people because everything's it's like it zaps all of your energy. But then there are some people who, it's not to say that everyone that's depressed stays in their room, in a dark room under their duvet.
Because that's what stereotypically people do think.
Yeah, and it does happen. Mm-hmm. But there are also people that are what you could call, say, high functioning, that's like the terminology, who will feel like this is what I want to do, but it's almost like putting on a mask, and will step outside the door and be like, when I'm outside, I'll give off the impression that everything is okay and I'm handling my life and everything's great. But once they come back in and shut the door, it's like the mask goes off and the depression.
So someone could be literally in front of you and smiling and acting completely normal, and they could be going through depression.
Yeah, they could literally be like, this is the hardest thing ever, because it takes a lot of energy to pretend that I'm okay. It takes a lot. So, you know, it's about listening for the words and the language that the person might be using. So they might look okay, but if their words are sort of talking in a sort of, well, it's always that way, and there's no kind of hope. Because I like to also describe depression as a sort of, it's like a loss of hope.
There's nothing else to look forward to in life. What's
the point?
Yeah.
Everything I try doesn't work. Nothing works for me. Everything's against me. What's the point? I might as well just give up. So that's why I mean with that lack of motivation. And also in my work, that when I've worked with people or young people with depression, after a lot of digging and kind of exploring, loss seems to be in there.
As in like a loss of a person or just something?
Loss in general.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it could be a loss of a loved one, a family member. It could be a breakup in a relationship. Not necessarily, you know, a romantic relationship, but best friends falling out. And, you know, it's a loss. Loss of a job, loss of a pet, just any kind of a loss. Moving home, moving out of a place where you've you know, I feel like I belong, and then having to be somewhere where I don't fit in, and it doesn't serve me as it used to. Like it's like grief, and I find that depression somehow links in with that.
Are you good at, because your kids call it the counsellor look, are you good at reading that in people, even if they think they're putting on a mask? Can you kind of tell?
A lot of the time, yeah. And I'll ask questions.
Okay.
But I will never push. I might ask questions, and if I can see that it's a no, don't go there, I will leave them with a, you know, you can always come and chat if you want to, you know, I'm here.
Is that something you learn, like through your qualifications or just through time?
Definitely.
Or just you been able to pick up intuition?
Yeah, I think I've something I've been like since young. People have come and confided in me even as a young kid. So yeah.
How do you think social media has changed mental health over the years?
I think, as I said earlier, celebrities, you know, like with the royals and their mental health charity, and they've been putting a lot of money into that, and a lot of putting a lot of stuff on social media around that. There's a lot more mental health practitioners that are going on and doing short TikToks, or, you know, Instagram videos, reels, things like that. And I think that the more social media is flooded with people who are qualified to talk about these things, once social media is flooded with more people that do that, I think that it breaks that stigma. And like I've said, you know, people will feel more comfortable. I think it's good that social media is picking up on mental well-being, and I think the pandemic has played a big part in that because of the impact that had on people.
It really did.
Yeah.
Do you think young people are dealing with more pressure now than ever before in terms of how to look, how to get the best out of life, career-wise? Do you think they're experiencing more pressure than ever once was? You're not sure? Are you thinking back to when you was a child and then what we deal with?
Because I have to, you know, I have to. And I think that now, because of social media and everything is out there for everybody to see, we could off the back just say, oh yeah, definitely, because we're seeing and hearing about it more. But in my day, there was no internet. There wasn't even a mobile phone. I'm like, you know, landline generation.
What's a landline?
3 channels generation.
Yeah.
So, you know, there was no kind of, it wasn't out there. You know, we didn't even understand things like ASD, autism spectrum disorder.
That wasn't a thing back then, right?
It was a thing.
It was a thing, sorry, but no one knew.
Not even anxiety was not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, so we went through it all. We had pressures, but I think that what I would say is that social media has magnified it.
Ooh, okay.
So I don't think this is very controversial, me saying this. I don't think it's any different. I think that it's magnified. Social media it's just made it bigger. And I feel like it's kind of gotten out of control because of the things that you can access online now.
I was going to say, do you think a lot of people self-diagnose now because they think they can just go on Google and like, oh, I've got this, or this person said they have this, oh yeah, same. So they just self-diagnose like, oh yeah, I have anxiety because this person is going through the same thing as me.
Definitely, 100%. I experienced that in my counselling room. I have, you know, people, I think this, and I think, why do you feel that? Because I saw on TikTok or I read it on Instagram, or okay. But I think the dark side of it is the groups that people are able to access now, and the kind of alternative routes to therapy that people, these sort of groups that are just not helpful, and actually will make it worse. Although it may appear to be helping, we're all the same, we're all going through this. Let's and there's a little community that they might build, and instead of helping each other, actually.
Amazing. Well, I've personally learned so much from you today. I'm sure everyone watching this will have learned so much as well. So I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. If there's any message you want to get out there, where to find you, where to find help, anything you want to say, you can look at, I think it's this camera. Sorry, that camera. Any message you want to say for 2 minutes, and then,
a message I want to say for 2 minutes. Don't be afraid to talk about your mental health. Don't be afraid of your emotions. I would say emotions are not bad. In my books, there's no good or bad emotions. Emotions are an indicator. They let you know that something is happening in your body. Just like on your dashboard, car light, your oil is running out, your oil light will come up, your handbrake's still on, you'll have the handbrake. Emotions are the same thing. They just let you know that something's happening. If it doesn't feel good and it's overwhelming and you feel like you can't cope, get help. There's no shame in looking for help. There's no shame in recognizing that I'm struggling. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself, and you will thank yourself. And this is coming from somebody that's done it personally. Yes, that would be my message. Just, if you need help, go for it, and don't be afraid. You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram page is at hidden treasure, no S, hidden treasure CS for sugar. And that's where you'll find me. I'm also on Facebook under Hidden Treasure Counselling. And I think that's it. Just take care of you and value. You're valuable. Know your worth, even if nobody else does. But just know that you're valued and you're important, and so is your mental health. Yeah.
That was a great message to end off. Thank you so much for being here, Kelly, again. And thanks guys for watching.